Alright, what's up, y'all? It's Daryl D, Daryl D TV. Welcome back. Man, it's cold out here. It's cold out here in Michigan right now. I need to get my butt back to Phoenix. Anyway, story time today. Today, I want to tell you about one of the old school rap tours that I attended back in the 80s. This is 1989, 1990, and this was the LL Cool J Nitro tour. The Nitro tour, the lineup was crazy. LL Cool J, of course, being the headliner, and also on this tour was De La Soul, EPMD, Slick Rick, and Big Daddy Kane. All on one show. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, my hometown. Mecca Arena. The Mecca Arena was the place. That's where all of the big tours, that's where it would come through back in those early days, 80s and 90s. I'm not sure if they're still around, but the Mecca Arena held anywhere from 11 to like 13,000 people, depending on, the show that they were having there and whatnot. And of course, I had to be there, being the rap connoisseur that I am. So, excuse me, I got this tickle in my throat. Yeah, the show was fantastic. I wish I could find more people who attended some of these old school concerts just to get their perspective and their memories on, what went down, what took place back in those days. So for those of you who weren't able to be there, that's some of why I'm even making this video, just to kind of give you my experience from that show. So here we go. Now, the opening acts were EPMD and De La Soul. These were the opening acts back then. For whatever reason, their sound wasn't that great. I believe it was De La Soul that went on first. They were not the De La Soul that you know now. This was just their first album that they had put out. De La Soul's Dead hadn't come out at that time, if I remember correctly. I think they were just doing songs off of their first album. Potholes in My Lawn, Me, Myself, and I. What was the other? They had another single off of that album. But they were only up there maybe 20, 25 minutes or whatnot. And the sound, it wasn't that great. It sounded awful. But of course, we're talking about De La Soul here. So I don't say that, in a bad way, like, it wasn't great or whatever. It's just that they were not as big as they are right now. They were not the rap legends then that you know them to be right now. In fact, while they were on, people were still coming into the venue. The venue was only maybe 2/3 full at that time. So people are still coming in and being ushered to their seats and whatnot. And but I'm there early. I'm there before the party starts. So I don't remember anything being super memorable about De La Soul and the show, their performance, but they're De La Soul, and of course, Me, Myself, and I was the huge song they had at the time, and people went crazy when they performed that. So moving right along, then we come to EPMD. Now, EPMD, pretty much the same thing. The sound wasn't that great, but they did a great show. They were a huge group back then. But at the time, you have to understand, 1988 was like a huge year for rap music and rap albums. A lot of classic rap albums came out. So by 89, 90, when they were doing these big tours, you know, these songs were huge. And anybody that's familiar with the Strictly Business LP from EPMD, they know that there was some bangers on there. So, you know, they did the damn thing. Yes, they had Steezo with them, you know, and other backup dancers that was getting it in. Great show. The most memorable thing that I can tell you about or take away from that show was DJ Scratch. Oh my goodness. This man did this DJ solo like in the middle of the show, and he was rocking doubles of Run DMC Beats to the Rhymes. D, that's me, the king, the MC. D, that's me, the king, the M. Yo, D, that. He was just doing his thing, back and forth, doing all kinds of stuff. He was the first guy I ever saw jump up on the table, scratch with his, take the crossfader in between his legs and go back and forth. And he stood up on the table and he was back spinning through his legs with his hands. I mean, the place went absolutely bananas when DJ Scratch was on doing his thing, man. It was crazy. Let me tell you, that place wasn't the same after Scratch got off of the turntables. I don't think anybody was actually expecting that. Man, he killed it. And he did it with the Beats to the Rhymes 12 inches. That was the most memorable thing that I can remember from the EPMD performance. So moving right along, next up we had Big Daddy Kane. Am I saying that? No, I take that back. Slick Rick came up next. Slick Rick at the time had the hottest album, the hottest rap album in the country. Great Adventures of Slick Rick. Do I really have to go into detail about that record? If I do, you need to go do some more research. Come back and watch the rest of this video. But that album was hot. It was huge. It was big. And Slick Rick had on what looked like, I don't know, 30 pounds of jewelry. He had like one of the biggest gold ropes that I ever seen in my life. Biggest gold rope I ever seen in my life was Too Short had this gold rope when he was touring with the NWA tour back in the day, and it was like huge. It was like huge. Slick Rick had the second biggest rope on that I'd ever seen, and it was on that tour. Plus he had like, I don't know, 10, 15 ropes on. You know how Slick Rick do it. He had on a crazy amount of gold jewelry. He had these, the stage was set up to where they had these big white pillars, almost like ancient Egypt or Pompeii or something like that, I don't know. But these big, huge white pillars were on stage, and it was set up like, like ancient Egypt or something. And then his backup dancers, they were all, which were all women, they were all dressed like, like I Dream a Genie or whatever, with the lace and all of that on, and, the veils, and, I don't know what they call them outfits. Y'all know what I Dream a Genie, or like a belly dancer or something like that, with the provocative clothing or whatnot. It was crazy. But he did his thing. Anybody familiar with the Greatest Adventures of Slick Rick LP, you know that LP is banging from beginning to end. No filler on there whatsoever. And so Slick Rick got busy with that. Great show, great show. Next you had Big Daddy Kane. Now Big Daddy Kane had this giant crown. It was just like a big king's crown, and it was it was like huge. It was probably, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 feet high, and maybe like 25, 30 feet, maybe a little longer across. It was huge, and it was just kind of revolving, and at some point it stopped and it opened up, and then Big Daddy Kane came walking out of it. Yo, it was crazy, man. It was crazy. It wasn't until that show that I realized that Big Daddy Kane was like a sex symbol to all these women and stuff, all these chicks, because I always thought Big Daddy Kane was just like a hardcore rapper, because when you heard Raw, and when you heard what was his other joint from back then, when you heard all them early Big Daddy songs where he was just going off, whoa, 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 but he comes out on stage and the girls is going crazy. And I guess it kind of made a little bit more sense, because halfway through his show, you know, he disappears. Scoop and Scrap Lover, which were his backup dancers, they was killing it. Wasn't nobody touching Scoop and Scrap back then. They were the illest dancers, hands down. But halfway through the show, the stage kind of opens up, and Big Daddy Kane comes out, and he's laying in this like bathtub, like this giant bathtub. You know, he comes out, and wasn't no water in it or nothing, but you know, he gets out and he's like, you know, barely dressed, and the chicks is going crazy, whatnot, and I guess that's why he's a sex symbol. I don't know, but you know, the Kane, he had, you know, that first Kane album. Come on, y'all, come on. Y'all know what time it is. If you're not familiar with that album, it's one of the greatest rap albums ever. Cold Chillin' was not messing around back then. Go check out that first Kane album if you're not familiar with it. But I'm not sure if his second album had come out by then. I probably should have looked that up first. Other than the songs off of the first album and those early 12 inches, I don't actually recall every song he did. That was a long time ago. But I do remember the crowd just being, you know, going crazy for this dude, you know, and rightfully so. Then we have the headliner, LL Cool J. Now, LL, you know, I've been checking out LL's live shows from the very beginning, and he always puts on a good show. He had three or four backup dancers, one guy, and the rest of them were chicks. And LL came out in a red Lamborghini. He drove like a red Lamborghini out on stage, and then he gets out of it. It was crazy. He started the show with that song, It Gets No Rougher. Am I saying that right? The A, the B, the C, the D, the E, that song. He started off with that. And so that was off the Walking with a Panther album. And that song, It Gets No Rougher, and Nitro, those were like the two like hardcore LL songs off of that album. And he started off with It Gets No Rougher. It was crazy bananas. Another really memorable thing about LL's performance is that LL actually danced. You don't see LL dance a lot, but he danced along with his backup dancers pretty much throughout the entire show. And he's very good. He's a very good dancer. I know a few years back I was corresponding with the guy that won male backup dancer on that show, corresponding with him online, and he was telling me that he was the choreographer, you know, for that whole tour, and that he actually, taught LL a lot of those dance moves. But yeah, sure enough, remember this guy and remember that show. It was a crazy show. And of course, by then LL was 3 albums in. Am I saying that right? Radio, Bad, and Walking with a Panther. Yeah. So he was 3 albums in at that time. So he had a lot of hits, I think Jinglin' Baby was on that 3rd album. What was that one song? What was the one song? I'm That Type of Guy. Am I saying that right? I'm the type of guy. Yeah, I'm the type of guy was off of that album. Plus all the bangers from the first 2 albums. Do I really have to break those down? I don't think so. So, of course, the show was bananas. As usual, the Mecca Arena was at capacity. I never been to a tour back then that wasn't completely packed. And I went to a lot of shows back then. And I'm going to talk about some of those shows in the past as I do more of these story time videos. So again, this was the LL Cool J Nitro tour. He toured between 89 and 90, doing this tour with the crazy lineup of EPMD, De La Soul, Big Daddy Kane, and Slick Rick. And I just wanted to share that with y'all. I wish I could remember a little bit more, but I just remember back then the energy at those shows were always crazy, you know what I mean? And so many people. And it's like after each one of those shows at the Mecca, I kid you not, every Denny's in the whole entire city of Milwaukee would be full of concert goers, because it was one of the few places that was open 24 hours back then. So you could literally go to any Denny's anywhere in the city of Milwaukee after a big show like that, and you see that it was full of concert goers from whatever show that had just taken place at the Mecca Arena. All right. So if any of you old school cats like myself were at any of those shows, and hit me in the comments and tell me some of your memories, because I'd like to, see what I left out or what I didn't recall from some of the from that show rather. And tell me about some of your favorite shows or some of your favorite tours that you attended, or maybe share with me your favorite live concert of all time and who it was and where it was, because I'm interested in hearing that. And we'll leave it there. All right. So this has been story time again with Daryl D, and we'll see you next time on Daryl D TV. Until then, please be safe. Peace and love.